Elliot Ikilei here. What do we hear about? What am I here about? What am I speaking to you? Effectively, we know that gender ideology is now in schools, or if you didn't know that, the teachers are to embed in their programs this new form of gender ideology. What is it, and where does it come from? Perhaps it will help first if I give you a couple of examples of what they look like. Here is a particular question, and we'll come back to it as well at the same time, and I'm going to sort of go back and forth a little bit as well. But what I want to show you this. Okay, so now this is a document, and I'm very grateful to the person who sent it to me. I've been able to confirm since that it has been in a few different schools. It will be quite difficult to see, very possibly. That's okay. I'm going to read it out for you. This particular document was in a year 10 sexuality class. So this is 14-year-olds. All right, here we go. These are some of the questions that you can find in there. Number 11, why are heterosexual people so promiscuous? Number 9, the great majority of child molesters are heterosexual. Do you consider it safe to expose your children to heterosexual teachers? This one here. 12, would you want your children to be heterosexual, knowing the problems that they would face, such as heartbreak, disease, and divorce? All right, so these are questions that are in this page. Now, we're going to come back to that. We are going to come back to that, but I just wanted to put out exactly what's in the schools currently. Now, that's actually not even the embedded lesson plans. Those are simply parts of a healthy sexuality area of the school. We're going to move into that, and we're going to go dig in deeper. The way which I usually look at these things is the same way that we work on a youth case, on a case with a youth person who's either killed or abused, raped, or has become escalating in violent behavior, antisocial behavior. That is that we look back to understand what is now, and then to look at the trajectory going forward. That's the best way. So, where did all of this come from? Where did gender ideology come from? Where it really started to really hit in was actually by a New Zealander. Now, don't forget, gender ideology is a Western civilization crisis. Gender ideology has been pushed upon children overall in Western culture. And it's embarrassing, it's humiliating to know that the real strong push of this actually came from a New Zealander. He was a sexologist, and he was a person who even actually defended the idea of pedophilia. This is John Money. If I were to see the case of a boy aged 10 or 11 who's intensely erotically attracted towards a man in his 20s or 30s, if the relationship is totally mutual and the bonding is genuinely totally mutual, then I would not call it pathological in any way. That's John Money. John Money, the sexologist who actually believed that gender was fluid. He was very much the guy who put that in there, and he was a part of the Kinsey Institute, or at least the Kinsey Institute actually really liked this guy, of which he was a part of. The Kinsey Institute was actually set up by Kinsey. He was a guy who was very strong about sexual liberation, and he believed in very much about depravities being normalized. I'm going to show you a couple of things here. Please note, I hate the words trigger warning, but just be aware of some of the more horrific things that can occur. Kinsey was very interested in sadomasochism. He was given Hollywood treatment, which means that he was seen as a guy who helped out people. But effectively, Kinsey was also someone who dealt with depravity. He didn't even mind pedophilia. This is a piece of data that was part of the Kinsey data area. This is actually, the idea is duration of stimulation before climax, observations timed with second hand or stopwatch, age range from 5 months of age to adolescence. So yes, what you're looking at is literal data of pedophilia. So Kinsey had pedophiles actually working with him, working for him. He collected the data from them, and this is a graph that shows the time that it took for climax to occur in children and toddlers, and the ages did range from 5 months to adolescence. This is the type of data that you're actually looking at. And if you have a look there, that 188, that's just what they gave to Kinsey. All right. Also within Kinsey, this person here is Dr. Fritz van Billisek. He is a Nazi pedophile. So he also gave research, and research from him was taken by the Kinsey Institute in a well, and that's the type of institute that it was. This is not hidden information. This is actually known in the academic structures that they have. This is publicly known information as well. But you'll find that they really try to avoid this when they talk about it. So feel free, have a look for yourself. The Kinsey Institute and what they've come up with. This is a absolutely horrific form of academic study where it literally raped children in order to gain their data. That's the environment of which John Money has become a strong part of. So, John Money himself, of course, we know that he was very much into gender fluidity. He was a guy who actually pushed it really hard. And he was also the person who wasn't even opposed to the idea of pedophilia. So, where you may or may not know where John Money comes from is from a case called the David Roemer case, the John case. So, John Money basically put his theory into action. And the way in which he did that was he found that a twin set of boys one of them had a botched operation. So two brothers, twin boys, they had a particular medical condition that was in the way that they urinated. The doctor who tried to fix it for the first boy stuffed it completely, actually burnt the penis so it was unable to be utilized. The other boy, they decided not to, and his condition cleaned up just over a period of time. And horrifically, really they should have just left the boy alone and see if he would have grown up okay. So that's when John Money steps in, because the parents took him to Johns Hopkins Hospital, both of them. John Money was there already. He was a pioneer in terms of gender fluidity. He decided to put his theory to practice, and so between the ages of 0 to 15 years old, David Roemer was actually never told that he was a boy. They dressed him into clothing of a female. They made sure that he went around into girls' areas, and that they were always treating him as a little girl, even though he was a boy. Now, it was also noted, and again, this is not hidden information, this is publicly found information. It was actually known that he would go to the addresses, and this is confirmed by David Roemer himself, and he would go to the addresses, and then he would have the two brothers simulate sexual acts. He would be there Dr. Money would either be on there on his own, or he would be up there with up to 5 other various professionals. They would take photographs as well. So you had John Money, Dr. Money, going there and making sure that the two boys would engage in simulated sex activities. That was thrusting of the hips, and also that they would inspect each other's pubic area, their genitals. And this went on for quite a while. Now, apparently, of course, he got quite abusive when the boys actually refused to do certain acts, and that went on. It's also interesting that the parents were not there. That's a bit of a reoccurring theme. Tragically, both brothers actually ended up after that they went into depression, drug addiction, and in their 30s, both of them committed suicide. Just absolutely horrific, incredibly sad case that it was. And Dr. Money, he didn't really flinch. He just carried on with his research. He tried his experiment and it utterly failed to the point where the two boys killed themselves. So that's where that came from. Then, of course, we know that lately in the 70s, you had the era of the sexual revolution, so to speak. And then after that, in the 90s, more and more professors started coming in and saying, yeah, it's a gender social construct. And then in the early 2000s, then we started seeing it starting to seep its way into the education sector in the US, and also in some of the areas of, for example, the Scandinavian countries and France and a couple of those areas. So then it really started to pierce Canada, and then it started going to Canada. And in Canada, that's when, of course, Jordan Peterson came up. He became really big, and this is only in the last 10 years. 15 years. The United Kingdom took this on, education curriculum. Now they're at something like, I believe it's roughly 4,000% increase in children as young as 4 years old, now seeking gender therapies. That's mastectomies, that's cutting off the penis, splitting it, turning it to a vagina, puberty blockers, and all the areas there. As well as that, over the last 5-6 years, we've now got in places like the US and US, Canada, and I think in the UK, but I think the UK is starting to defend against it. Now you've got parents who are now being criminalised for saying that no, you're a boy, not a girl. You are my child. You're only 5-6 years old. I will tell you what I will say what you are because I'm your parent. I will say it. In New Zealand, it didn't come in one hit. It came in 2 hits, and the first hit was actually the Mates and Dates program. Okay, so this is Mates and Dates. I was very proud to be part of the organisation. We were the ones who forced the government to give us exactly what this was. Now, the Mates and Dates program is a program that says, it's respectful relationships. We're going to help you out with any sort of decision that you're sort of making. We're going to look after you, pretty much. But what actually happened was that in between this was actually pushing your child to question their very ideology. And that's where it gets, really deep, really scary sort of stuff. If you have a look at this particular one, acting out gender. To emphasise the students that sex and gender are distinct, we choose to express our gender. So basically what they did was they had you practice into different genders. Now, I also want to point out that they actually had trained people looking out for what was gender ideology or different genders. So in here, at the same time while they're doing activities like this, they're also actually putting out activities they're actually being trained. The trainers, so to speak, are saying that they're having this here. They were being trained to identify potential transgender children, and they were really asking them, hey, are you sure you're a boy? Are you sure you're a girl? You really may not be. When did you choose to become heterosexual? All right, now that's over in Australia, and that's again, these are very recent things. This is 2018 of what's going on here. 2018, Mates and Dates became into New Zealand. That's what's so shocking about the whole system there. So that's what we've got in Australia, and then it came over here, and that's what we have here. Now, I've got a few screenshots. I'll pop in links as well to show you exactly the area we go. Again, I'm incredibly proud that I was part of that team who actually forced the government to give us. We exposed it. No one else did. No one else even knew about it. We'd already known about it. We talked with some of the whistleblowers who were involved in it. They wanted to know what was going on, and so we showed them. We absolutely showed them. Right, so that's what's happening there. This is also one of the other resources. This is a resource that they were using. Again, this is for secondary school children. This is for secondary school children. All right. Now, this is not a one that ACC wanted to be used, but we were able to find out that actually this was being used a lot. Now, don't forget, these are for our children. These are for your children. So you've got gender identity, gender queer, gender expression, androgynous, biological sex, intersex, sexual orientation, bisexual. Okay, so that was Mates and Dates program. Now, if you want, we can now fast forward. Fast forward to last year, August. In August of last year, New Zealand First, I believe it was Tracy Martin, was very, very happy to show that they were about to push upon teachers the new Ministry of Education guidelines about sexuality and relationships. And they did. They forced it hard. So in August is when they put it out. Ministry of Education put this document out. I'll show you all of that. And what we found in there was quite shocking. This is one of the learning outcomes that you can find. This learning outcome is for 7 and 8 year old children. So for 7 and 8 year old children, they will be, quote, able to identify gender stereotypes, understand the difference between gender and sex, and know that there are diverse gender and sexual identities in society. Now that's quite fascinating because there's no discussion around gender dysphoria. There's no discussion about the aspect of normality. And we're going to have a look at here. This is another glossary from that term, heteronormativity, the assumption that heterosexuality is the default or normal, quote marks, sexual orientation, rather than being just one of many possibilities. All right, straight, people of the other binary gender, whatever that means. Their definitions don't include fact. They don't include that. They've basically carved off John Money's idea of sexuality or of identity, of gender being somehow separated from sex. It's not. It's not. Your gender actually has an intimate connection with your sex. There are so many studies out there that show that if you have boys, the boys want to play with trucks and weapons, and they want to play with rough and tumble stuff, and the girls want to play with more aspects around nurture. This is what's going on in our secondary schools. Now, again, I'm going to bring you back to this one. This is the one for the 7 and 8 year old children. The 7 and 8 year old children. The learning outcome is that they will understand the difference between gender and sex, and know that there are diverse gender and sexual identities in society. And the second one, that bottom one, they are able to contribute to and follow guidelines that support inclusive environments in the classroom and the school. This is the Ministry of Education document that has been put out to the schools that states that they will have these learning outcomes. That's what you're looking at right there. That is a Ministry of Education document. All right. Okay, that's 6 and 7 year olds. That's shocking. Let's have a look at another one that we have. This is in secondary school. Now, this is where I also started to discover that they were starting to angle towards the attack on the family. Now, I've done another video on that, but I might bring up something there. This one is for secondary school kids. This is, I believe, this one is the 14, 15, or I think this is either 14-year-olds or 15-year-olds. This one, you are able to critically evaluate societal standards to sex and sexuality, including attitudes in families, communities, religious contexts, and online. Can apply health promotion strategies to enhance sexual health and affirm diversity. All right. Now, make no mistake, they don't like families, they don't like churches, they don't like they don't want to say anything about mosques, but they very much are against the idea of Christianity or our traditional pillars of our society. The other secondary school one are able to compare concepts of love, attraction, romance, pleasure, and consent from different perspectives. All right, look at that. Able to compare from different perspectives. That's actually quite dangerous. And in different situations, and can take ethical standpoints. Example, by considering cultural values, church values, and family values. All right, so I want you to take note of that. You see that? All right. Can take ethical standpoints. That means that your children are being taught to take a stand against what you have in church values, family values, cultural values. All right, they're not looking for academic rigor. They're not looking for scientific discipline. That's not what this is about. They're looking for that. And look at that bottom one here. Able to critique heteronormative messages and practices in the community, in the school or community, and recommend actions to address these. So again, it's pushing hard on John Money's love of what he viewed as a social construct. Now keep in mind that all of this is based off shockingly bad science. It is an absolutely fractured, damaged science. Doesn't work at all. All right, and so that's what we have in those areas. Now, looking at some of the glossary terms that we have there. All right, there got transgender. This term describes a wide variety of people whose gender is different from the sex they were assigned at birth. Transgender people may be binary or non-binary, and some opt for some form of medical intervention, such as hormone therapy or surgery. Now I want to point that out. All right, so you have a look there. All right, a wide variety of people whose gender is different from the sex they were assigned at birth. Sex, you're not assigned at birth as sex. You are male or female. Your gender that they want to push is that splitting of aspects. And keep in mind, don't forget as to where this comes from. All right, and that's really important. All right. So, the identity aspect that they have, again, this is not scientific at all. This is not science. It really, really isn't. Sex at birth, and I just wanted to put out there, heteronormativity, assumption that heterosexuality is a default or normal sexual orientation. Can I just say something there? I'm going to switch this to the side. All right. The fact is that it actually is the default sexual orientation, because our bodily systems, the way that physiology works and biology works, is that we are designed to be heterosexual. Now, within that, you can have some aberrations, abnormalities. You can have some absolutely tragic accidents that can occur, like David Roemer. You can have psychological dysphorias, or you can have psychological disorders. You can have all of those. When we talk about intersex, we've got to treat all of these people with compassion and tolerance. But what we don't do is actually force society to agree with the delusion that one is the opposite sex of what they are. We don't see, hey, should we have taxpayer-funded liposuction for people who've got anorexia? That doesn't make sense. Why? Because they have a psychological condition that we need to treat, that we need to be around with. What we don't say is, oh, you know what, you are correct. You identify as a fat person. You know what, okay, cool. Well, let's get you working. Let's allow you to eat less. Let's say, hey, no problem. Let's give you liposuction. Let's do all that. That is absolutely abusive. And yet it is given the same sort of treatment. As this transgenderism being pushed upon children now is actually being saying the same thing. That in actual fact, the dysphoria that you have in your mind, you know what, we're going to agree with it, and we are going to split penis, double mastectomy, give you puberty blockers, actually make it less able for parents to have a say in that medical attack on puberty. And that's what we're starting to see more and more. Now let's go back to our area here when we see this year 10. This one is a particularly year 10 class that we have here. I'm very thankful for the person who actually sent this to me. Yep, mana kia koe. I absolutely appreciate it. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to read it because I know it can be a little bit hard to read. Now this is a question given to 14-year-old children. Please keep that in mind. Number 1, what do you think caused your heterosexuality? Number 2, when and how did you first decide you were heterosexual? Number 3, is it possible that your heterosexuality is just a phase you may grow out of? Number 4, this one really makes me quite angry. Is it possible that your heterosexuality stems from a fear of others of the same sex? Number 5, this one is actually quite disgusting and does remind me of that John Money. If you have never slept with a member of your own sex, is it possible that you might be gay if you tried it? I have since done a little bit of background checking, and from what I can tell, it's been given from year 9 to year 13. So that's 13-year-old children to 17-year-old children, 16, 17-year-old children, or teenagers. If heterosexuality is normal, why are so many mental patients heterosexual? And just that second page there, why do you heterosexual people try to seduce others into your stereotype? Why do you flaunt your heterosexuality? Can't you just be who you are and keep it quiet? Number 9, this one I've mentioned earlier. The great majority of child molesters are heterosexual. Do you consider it safe to expose your children to heterosexual teachers? Absolutely shocking. With all the societal support that marriage receives, the divorce rate is spiraling. Why are there so few stable relationships among heterosexual people? Number 11, why are heterosexual people so promiscuous? And number 12, would you want your children to be heterosexual, knowing the problems that they would face, such as heartbreak, disease, and divorce? This is in our schools. This is in your schools. This is taxpayer funded. This is absolutely Ministry of Education delivered. And its origins are in an institute that engaged in pedophilia didn't hide it and was pushed forward by a New Zealand sexologist who defended pedophilia, and in fact his own experiments to put out his theory failed so miserably that it led to the two brothers committing suicide. This ideology birthed from sexual exploitation of children by child rape, child molestation. And it has actually been able to seep through Western civilization and is now paid for by you to be put into your schools, to be put into the classrooms, and to be embedded without you even being there. That's why it's so bloody important. Okay, so what can we do? Can we do anything at all? Or was this, the machine grinding us into paste? You, as a parent, have the absolute lawful right to demand what is happening in the programs. What are they teaching? I'm going to be putting up all the links. I'll be making sure that they're on there. I just want you to know that you've got power. You've got the ability to be in there. You've got the ability to demand what's happening. Now, when we did come out with all of the evidence that occurred around the Mates and Dates program, we were advised that up to 6 different high schools stopped doing the Mates and Dates programs. I think 4 of the schools were because the parents got involved and said, you will not do this to our children. And I think the other 2, the teachers and the heads themselves saw it, were absolutely shocked and actually stopped it themselves. So please note that many times the teachers and the management won't even know, and sometimes they will. But what is important is that as parents, we all come together. We have real power. Parents actually have a lot of power still. In the meantime, stay strong, be together. God bless you, and God bless New Zealand.
The medical community was under the impression that my case was a success story. And I was shocked when I heard that people thought that my case was a success story.